Before this story begins, take a second to like the video, subscribe for more HFY sci-fi stories, and comment with your favorite apex predator from fiction. Your support keeps these stories coming, and trust me, you'll want to stay for what happens next. The first alarm never sounded. That was the detail Elias Vorn noticed, even as the deck plating vibrated beneath his boots and the low murmur of the trade ship Crown of Ithar slipped into a sudden, unnatural quiet. No klaxons. No panicked announcements. Just silence spreading down the corridor like a held breath. Elias adjusted the strap of his travel-worn coat and continued walking, unhurried, a small metal case hanging from his right hand. To anyone watching, he looked ordinary, another human freight escort drifting between systems for credits and anonymity. To the ship's manifest, he was listed as non-essential personnel. To the people boarding the ship at that very moment, he was worth a fortune. The breach occurred 3 decks above him. A clean cut through the hull, sealed almost instantly by a mercenary-grade force collar. The boarding team slid inside with military efficiency, 6 heavily augmented professionals wearing matte black armor devoid of insignia. Their weapons stayed low, their movements practiced. This wasn't a raid. It was a retrieval. Target confirmed aboard, their commander said over a private channel. Human male. Alive if possible. They did not yet know his name. Elias felt the shift in the ship the way sailors once felt storms through the soles of their feet. He paused near a maintenance junction and let his eyes travel the corridor, overhead lights dimmer than regulation, wall panels faintly warm to the touch. The Crown of Ithar was old, but it was well maintained. And it was not alone out here. A crewman hurried past him, eyes fixed forward, mouth pressed thin. No greeting. No warning. That confirmed it. Elias stepped aside, keyed a small access panel, and slipped into a narrow service alcove just as the first mercenaries reached his deck. Their boots barely made sound. Their visors glowed faintly as they scanned for biosignatures. They walked past him without noticing. Not because he hid well, but because the ship chose not to reveal him. Somewhere deep within the vessel, systems rerouted. Bulkheads responded to commands that were not on any official interface. Thermal buffers shifted, masking a single human signature while highlighting half a dozen intruders with ruthless clarity. The Crown of Ithar had accepted Elias days ago. Its other occupant had accepted him long before that. The mercenaries advanced in a staggered formation, confidence eroding as their sensors returned conflicting data. One moment the target appeared 3 corridors ahead. The next nowhere at all. "That's impossible," one of them muttered. The lights flickered. The rear operative turned to check their 6. He vanished. There was no gunfire. No scream. Just absence, where a man and 400 kilograms of armor had been a fraction of a second before. Weapons came up instantly. The team tightened formation, hearts spiking as adrenaline overrode training. "What the hell was that?" someone whispered. Elias closed his eyes briefly in the alcove, listening, not with his ears, but with instincts honed on battlefields light years away. He felt the disturbance pass through the ship like a predator's shadow. Fast, controlled, deliberate. They had crossed a boundary. The mercenaries moved faster now, discipline fraying as fear crept in despite themselves. Another disappeared 15 seconds later. This time there was a sound, a wet, metallic thud far above them, followed by the slow drip of something heavy striking the deck. The commander swallowed. Change of plan. We grab the human and burn out. Whatever's here, we're not contracted for it. Elias stepped out of the alcove. Not to run. Not to hide. To wait. The corridor ahead of him darkened as if the ship itself were dimming its eyes. The air grew warmer, carrying a low-frequency vibration that settled into his chest. He rested the metal case at his feet and placed one hand on the wall, steady and calm. He felt it then, a vast attention turning toward him. The mercenaries saw him at last. A lone human standing in the open corridor, unarmed, meeting their approach without fear. Target acquisition locked instantly. "On your knees," one barked. Elias didn't move. Behind the mercenaries, the ship's geometry seemed to bend. Panels withdrew soundlessly. Something massive repositioned itself within spaces never meant to contain a living thing. The commander's visor finally caught the reading that didn't belong. His voice dropped to a whisper. That's not possible." Elias allowed himself a faint smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. "Too late," he said quietly. The first mercenary's helmet crumpled inward as an unseen force struck with impossible precision. The others didn't get a chance to scream. Elias picked up the metal case and stepped back as the corridor filled with motion too fast to follow, claws and shadow and disciplined annihilation. He did not flinch. He never did. By the time the hallway fell silent again, there was nothing left of the boarding team but silence and cooling armor. Deep within the ship, the Predator paused. It turned its attention fully to the human. Elias met its gaze without words, without challenge, and did not lower his eyes. The ship continued on its course through uncharted space, carrying a truth the galaxy had forgotten. Some humans were not prey, and some predators chose their own. The ship did not slow after the boarding party was erased. That, more than the sudden silence, unsettled the surviving mercenaries clustered on the auxiliary deck. Their commander, Voss, veteran of 3 sector wars, stood at the center of the remaining group and forced his breathing into something steady. Fear, he knew, was contagious. If it took hold, they would die before whatever haunted this vessel reached them. 3 of their number were already gone. No distress pings. No biomass drift. Just gaps in formation where professionals had existed seconds earlier. "This ship isn't defending itself," Voss said, voice clipped. "It's hunting." The word tasted wrong even as he spoke it. Their visors painted the corridor ahead in ghostly overlays. Hull temperature fluctuated in strips along the walls, as if something enormous moved just behind them. Sound sensors registered vibrations too low to be mechanical, too rhythmic to be random. One of the mercenaries swallowed. "Sir, there's no species on record that can." "Then update the record if you survive," Voss snapped. They advanced anyway. They always did. Retreat without the asset would cost them their contracts, their reputations, and likely their lives once their employers learned of the failure. Mercenaries survived on certainty, and certainty demanded forward motion. Deep within the ship, the Predator shifted. Its awareness was not limited by corridors or bulkheads. It felt intruders as disturbances in a living structure, as heat where there should be none, as foreign intent pressing against claimed space. This vessel had accepted them once, briefly, until their purpose became clear. It had not accepted their weapons. The mercenaries rounded a bend and entered a cargo junction wide enough to land a small shuttle. Crates lay stacked in orderly silence. No ambush came. The absence gnawed at them. "Target signal reacquired," a mercenary said. "Human is 2 decks below." "Stationary." Voss frowned. Stationary meant prepared or bait. Humans seldom waited unless they wanted something. "Move," he ordered. As they crossed the junction, the gravity shifted. Not enough to register as a malfunction, just enough to throw their balance by half a degree. One mercenary stumbled, cursed, and caught himself. The deck beneath him opened. It wasn't a trapdoor in any conventional sense. The plating simply pulled apart, folding inward as if the ship had exhaled. The mercenary dropped without time to scream, vanishing into darkness that closed seamlessly behind him. Weapons fired. The remaining team lit the junction with plasma and kinetic rounds, tearing through crates and bulkheads. Containers burst open, spilling frozen cargo that burned, melted, or vaporized under stray shots. Nothing bled. Nothing answered. "Fall back." Voss barked. The order came too late. Something struck from above, fast, impossibly precise. A mercenary was yanked upward so violently his spine could not withstand the force. His body hit the ceiling an instant before he disappeared into the ship itself, panels closing around him as though swallowing prey. 2 left. Then 1. Voss fired at a shadow that slid across his vision, his rounds deflecting uselessly against an unseen living mass. His combat HUD screamed warnings it could not classify. For the first time in decades, Voss considered the possibility that skill, experience, and planning were irrelevant here. Some battles were decided by territory alone. Elsewhere in the ship, Elias Vorn moved. He navigated through maintenance corridors the way a man walked through memory, each turn chosen without hesitation. The Predator's presence surrounded him now, not as a threat, but as an immense gravity shaping the space around him. He felt it pass close enough to stir his coat, and continued on without comment. He had learned long ago that acknowledgement was not submission. The ship opened a passage for him, lights brightening just enough to guide his steps. The metal beneath his boots thrummed with a living cadence, and Elias found himself matching it without conscious thought. He was not leading. He was being accompanied. At the auxiliary deck, Voss ran. Professional pride had shattered into raw survival instinct. He sprinted down the corridor, armor scraped and cracked, weapon nearly drained. His HUD flickered intermittently, struggling to make sense of space that no longer obeyed its maps. He burst into a pressure lock and slammed the manual seal. The door began to close. It stopped. Metal screamed as something held it open from the other side. Voss fired point-blank into the narrowing gap, plasma washing over flesh that refused to die. A shape emerged, not fully, never fully. Too large, too complex, layered with muscle and armor that had grown rather than been forged. Eyes like compressed starlight fixed on him with terrible clarity. It did not roar. Roars were for dominance displays. This was execution. Voss collapsed backward, weapon slipping from numb fingers. The predator loomed, head lowering fractionally, not to threaten but to observe. As if weighing him. Then it withdrew. The door sealed. The lock disengaged. Voss lay there gasping alone. His visor flared and a new feed overrode all others. A human stood on the far side of the lock's small viewport, calm and untouched, regarding him with mild, almost weary interest. Elias rested one hand on the glass. "You should have left when the ship let you," he said. Voss stared, comprehension dawning like horror. "It's yours?" Elias shook his head once. "No. I'm its responsibility." The lights dimmed. Behind Voss the door began to open again, slowly, inexorably. Elias stepped back as the corridor filled with shadow. "You never came for me," he added quietly. "You came through it." The predator returned, and this time it did not pause. The pressure lock never fully opened. It did not need to. What returned to the corridor from the far side was no longer a man capable of escape, and the ship understood that distinction perfectly. The bulkhead sealed again with gentle finality, muting the last sound Voss would ever make. The predator withdrew into the architecture, becoming vibration, heat, and attentive silence once more. Elias stood alone in the corridor, breathing evenly, his pulse steady despite the ruin just beyond the glass. He did not watch the end. He never did. Mercy, when it existed, was found in not bearing witness. The ship's lighting adjusted as he turned away, guiding him toward the central transit spine. With each step, he felt the weight of awareness moving alongside him, vast and patient. The predator did not crowd him. It never had. Distance was a language it respected, and Elias returned that respect without thought. They reached a junction where the corridor widened and the ceiling lifted high above, an open space built to move cargo and lives efficiently. Elias stopped there, setting the metal case against the wall. He removed his coat, folded it with ritual care, and placed it atop the case before sitting on the deck. It was an invitation. The plating in front of him shifted. Panels dissolved into negative space, and the predator emerged enough to be seen, not fully, never fully. Its forelimbs anchored into the deck with controlled grace, claws dimly reflective, grown thick with microfractures that told stories of impact and survival rather than decay. Its head lowered to his level, stopping well short of encroachment. Up close, the thing was terrible and magnificent in equal measure. Layered armor merged seamlessly with muscle, and the air vibrated faintly around it, as though space itself resented its shape. Its eyes fixed on Elias, pupils adjusting not to light, but to intention. He met the gaze calmly. "You should have stayed farther out," Elias said, voice low. "They were reckless, but they weren't hunting you deliberately." The predator's throat plates shifted, a motion that was not sound but acknowledgement. It had felt the intruders long before they cut the hull. It had measured them, dismissed them, then altered its strategy when their purpose clarified. When they targeted the human, the calculus changed. Elias rested his elbows on his knees. "You don't need me moving around the ship. I won't complicate your patterns." Pause. A subtle shift in posture. Disagreement. The predator's awareness pressed closer, not threatening, just insistently present. It did not understand retreat when the center of interest remained unsecured. Elias had learned that years ago, on a moon whose name no longer existed in any map. That had been the first time. He remembered the wreckage, the broken transport half buried in volcanic ash, the way his squadmates had scattered under strobing fire. He remembered realizing he was outnumbered, outgunned, and already written off. And he remembered how something ancient had risen from beneath the ground at the sound of his last stand, drawn not by desperation but by defiance. Predators recognized that. "You're worried," Elias said, and allowed the truth of it into his voice. "But they're gone. No more intruders." The predator lowered its head further, close enough now that Elias could feel heat radiating from it, deep and steady. It did not withdraw. Its attention flicked briefly toward distant sections of the ship, then returned to him. It was waiting. For what, Elias knew too well. He pushed himself to his feet, collected his coat, and shrugged it on. "Fine," he said. "Together, then. Until we're clear." The tension in the air eased just slightly. They moved. Elias walked the open corridors now, no longer hidden by the ship's systems. He did not need to be. Whatever mercenaries remained had already learned the cost of pursuit, and those still alive were either trapped or hiding badly. They encountered resistance near the port escape craft. A pair of mercenaries, barricaded behind cargo crates, opened fire the instant they saw him. Their rounds tore into the decking at his feet, loud and desperate. "Hold your fire," one shouted, voice cracking. We'll leave. We'll leave right now." Elias stopped, hands visible. He believed them. Fear had done its work. Behind him, the predator did not halt. The mercenaries saw it then, saw the impossible bulk moving without haste, heard the vibration that preceded annihilation. One of them dropped his weapon and fell to his knees. Elias did not step aside. "You broke contract law," he said evenly. "You breached neutral territory. And you did it armed." "That wasn't us," the man sobbed. "It was," Elias replied and took a step back. The predator crossed the remaining distance in a blur of motion too fast for the mind to properly record. When it stopped, the mercenaries were gone, their barricade reduced to twisted metal and cooling scars. Silence reclaimed the corridor. Elias exhaled slowly. He felt no triumph, only completion. The ship's systems chimed softly, restoring baseline functions. Damage reports stabilized. Routes reopened. The crew would live. As the predator turned away, beginning the long withdrawal back into the spaces that belonged only to it, Elias spoke once more. "They'll talk," he said. "The survivors, the observers. Word will spread." The predator paused, massive frame outlined against the dim lights. It looked back at him, eyes narrowing minutely. Elias held its gaze without fear. "That's not a bad thing." After a moment, the predator vanished into the ship, leaving behind only a fading tremor and a sense of watchful absence. Elias retrieved his metal case and resumed his course through the corridor, alone once more in appearance, though never truly so. Somewhere beyond the hull, the stars waited. And somewhere within the ship, something waited with them. The ship's silence fractured as warning tones finally bled through the corridors. Not alarms for intruders, those had never been triggered, but system alerts cascading as damaged sections struggled to compensate for violence never meant to occur inside neutral hull plating. Bulkheads locked. Power conduits cycled. Gravity wavered as the crown of Ithar tried to decide which wounds mattered most. Elias felt the shift mid-stride. He stopped, braced one hand against the wall, and listened as the ship spoke in its own restrained language. Structural stress along the dorsal spine. Auxiliary reactors compensating for severed lines. And beneath it all, a sharp, unfamiliar tension. Something had changed. He turned and retraced his steps toward the engine access ring. The predator's presence flared in response, awareness snapping back into alignment with his movement. It did not emerge, but it watched closely now, focus sharpened. That was when the message punched through the ship-wide comm. "All units, this is Captain Saren. We have armed survivors regrouping near the primary engine housing. They've overridden manual safeties. Whatever they're planning." The transmission dissolved into static. Elias broke into a run. The corridors near the engine housing were scorched and scarred, the aftermath of desperation rather than strategy. He smelled hot insulation and burnt metal before the heat reached him, a warning that came too late for some of the systems already ruined. He slowed as he approached the open ring, peering around the curve of the corridor. 6 mercenaries remained. They had shed formation and subtlety entirely, clustered around a portable control spike drilled straight into the engine regulator. Their armor was cracked, visors crazed with stress fractures. One of them bled visibly inside his suit, crimson spreading beneath transparent plating. Fear had unified them more effectively than discipline ever had. "If we overload it, the ship will have to dump power and unlock the bays," one shouted. "We jump in the chaos. And kill everyone aboard," another snapped. "Better than being hunted." Elias stepped into view. Every weapon snapped toward him. "Stop," he said, voice carrying easily over the thrum of the reactor. "You won't make it in time. And even if you do, it won't save you." They stared at him, the calm human at the center of the storm. The one their people had come for and died over. "You did this," a mercenary snarled. "That thing follows you." Elias shook his head once. "You followed me." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the group as something immense shifted beyond the walls. Panels warped outward, bolts whining as stress limits screamed. The predator was close now, no longer content with distant control. Elias lifted one hand, palm open. "Leave the spike," he said. "Back away. I'll get you to an escape pod." The offer stunned them. Even now he would spare them. For a heartbeat, hope flickered. Then their commander stepped forward, a woman with one shattered visor and eyes hollowed by obsession rather than fear. "You think we believe you?" she said. "You're not human. Not anymore." She drove her elbow down hard on the detonator trigger. The Predator erupted through the wall. It did not break the bulkhead, it parted it, folding reinforced plating aside as if the ship itself had decided resistance was unnecessary. The heat surged, alarms screeching as containment fields strained. The mercenaries fired wildly. The Predator ignored the energy impacts, barreling forward with unstoppable momentum. 2 mercenaries died instantly, bodies crushed against the engine casing before they could fall. Another was flung bodily into the reactor shield, armor vaporizing in a brilliant flash. Elias surged forward at the same time, grabbing the control spike and wrenching it free before the overload could cascade. Pain lanced through his arm as feedback coursed through the device, but he held on long enough to hurl it aside, where it detonated harmlessly against a far wall. The final 3 mercenaries tried to run. They never reached the exit. The Predator moved with brutal economy, each strike final, each motion serving a singular purpose. When it finished, the engine room was silent except for the deep, steady pulse of the reactor returning to equilibrium. Elias leaned against the console, breathing hard. The Predator turned toward him, massive head lowering fractionally. Its attention burned brighter now, not with concern but with something harder to name. He straightened. "I said together until we're clear," he reminded it quietly. The Predator hesitated. Then it stepped back, withdrawing its bulk just far enough to restore balance to the room. The ship's systems caught their breath all at once, alarms dwindling into manageable alerts. Elias keyed his comm, "Captain Saren. Engine threat neutralized. Begin damage control. You're clear." A pause, then strained relief. "Understood. And, thank you." He closed the channel and looked at the devastation around them. Bodies, torn metal, scarred decks. Evidence that neutrality meant nothing when predators and men were forced into the same kill zone. The Predator watched him silently. "You kept the ship alive," Elias said. "That's enough." It did not leave right away. Instead, it remained as he walked the perimeter, ensuring nothing else was about to fail. Only when the system stabilized fully did the Predator finally begin to retreat, melting back into the ship with the ease of something that belonged to it far more than steel ever had. Elias remained behind, alone with the hum of a saved engine and the knowledge that this chapter was not finished. Someone, somewhere, had ordered this, and they would eventually want answers. The corridors of the Crown of Ithar were quiet at last. Not the quiet of absence, but the quiet of order restored. Bulkheads hummed with the steady pulse of functioning systems. Lights traced their lines across polished metal decks, illuminating scorch marks and fissures like scars earned in battle. Elias Vorn moved slowly, deliberately, letting the silence settle around him. The weight of the Predator's presence, though unseen, lingered in every vibration of the ship. He could feel it, watching, assessing, patient. He stopped at the viewport overlooking the main cargo bay. Crates lay twisted where the intruders had tried to force their way, yet not a single crew member had been lost. The ship had been defended not by guns but by something far older, far more intelligent. He pressed a hand against the glass and let the moment linger. The Predator had done what it did best, cleared the threat, and yet it had not claimed him. It had chosen him. That realization settled in Elias like a familiar weight. He had never sought companions, allies, or guardians. And yet, here was one that needed no persuasion. The apex hunter had not seen him as prey as all others had. It had seen him as something else. A partner, a chosen warrior. The ship creaked subtly as if acknowledging the truth. Somewhere in the depths, the Predator moved, a slow rhythm echoing like a heartbeat. Elias closed his eyes and recalled every encounter. The first boarding team, the empty corridors, the flash of movement that had obliterated mercenaries with surgical precision. He remembered the terror in their eyes, the disbelief, the inevitability. And through it all he had remained calm. He opened his eyes to the stars beyond the viewport. Infinite points of light, untamed and indifferent. Humanity had always been small against such vastness. Yet here, in this microcosm of space, he had endured, had influenced the tide of events not by raw power, but by resilience, intellect, and unspoken courage. The galaxy had underestimated him. It had underestimated humans. The hum of the ship's engines shifted subtly, alerting him to movement behind the walls. Not intrusion, not danger, simply the Predator returning, massive silhouette gliding from hidden passageways to appear at the edge of the viewport. Its head tilted slightly, eyes narrowing with curiosity. Its presence was both a warning and a reassurance. Elias stepped closer. You know, he said, voice steady, they'll tell stories. Survivors, guilds, anyone who thought humans were expendable. They'll spread rumors about the ship, about me. The Predator's throat plates shifted. That soundless vibration was acknowledgement. It understood, not through language but through shared experience, that stories mattered. That survival mattered. That humans, when pushed, had a capacity for resilience no alien intelligence had truly comprehended. Elias exhaled slowly. Let them talk. Let them remember. He paused, letting the weight of it settle. Let them fear what they can't control. The Predator dipped its head slightly, a motion Elias interpreted as respect. There was no pride here, no domination. Only recognition. He understood then that this bond was rare, forged in moments of choice, trust, and necessity. The hunter had accepted him as he had accepted the Predator, not as a master, not as a servant, but as a peer. Movement in the shadows signaled the final act. The remnants of the mercenary network, scattered and humiliated, had attempted to escape. Sensor feeds showed small craft activating, shuttles breaking away from the crown of Ithar. Elias walked to the communication array and keyed a channel. Stop them, he said simply. Minutes later, automated intercept protocols redirected escape pods toward containment zones. The Predator's influence was subtle, unseen, but lethal. None survived the attempt to flee. None would return to tell tales of their overconfidence. Elias stepped back and surveyed the ship. Damage was superficial now. Systems stabilized. Crew members emerged from secured quarters, pale and shaken, yet alive. They regarded him with awe, whispers passing through them. He's the human, one muttered. The one they warned us about. He allowed himself a faint smile, brief, unremarkable. He did not need accolades. Humanity had survived here, intact, and it had endured because of him. That was enough. The Predator moved closer, almost brushing his shoulder. Elias glanced at it, then back to the viewport. Stars burned in different patterns outside, and yet, here in the microcosm of a single vessel, a new order had been established. Humans were not prey. Humans could survive against the apex, against mercenaries, against the galaxy itself. He crouched slightly, resting his hand on the viewport frame. We've done it, he said. For now. But they'll come again. Others will follow. The Predator tilted its head, eyes reflecting starlight. Elias understood the unspoken agreement. They would face them. Together. From the depths of the ship came a low, vibrating hum, like the Predator asserting presence in the architecture itself. Elias felt it wrap around him, comforting and powerful. He straightened and turned to face the deck, the corridors ahead clear, yet charged with the potential of new threats. He lifted his coat from the case and slung it over his shoulder. Let them come, he whispered. Let them see what they can't control. The Predator stepped fully into the corridor now, massive, deliberate, a silhouette framed by emergency lights and the glow of repaired consoles. Its claws scraped lightly against the floor, not a threat but a promise. Elias met its gaze, unflinching. Then the Predator exhaled in its silent way and moved to one side, allowing him passage. Elias walked forward, boots ringing against the metal floor, each step measured, unafraid. The ship carried him onward, alive, victorious but not untouched. And in the infinite void outside, stars continued their indifferent dance. Yet within this vessel, one human had claimed his place, not as prey, not as pawn, but as chosen. And the Predator, apex of its species, had confirmed it. Together, they vanished into the labyrinth of the ship, shadows and presence intertwined, a human and an apex predator who had rewritten the rules of survival. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, whispers began to spread, of a human who could walk beside the impossible, unbroken, unshaken, unstoppable. The crown of Ithar carried its crew, its human and its predator onward. A vessel no longer neutral but legendary. And in that quiet, suspended moment, Elias Vorn understood the truth. Some humans were not meant to be hunted. They were meant to endure, to lead, and to be remembered. The galaxy would learn that lesson. And it would not forget.